go!
The first two sins in this video are both pointless and thrown away like foreign relations under the Trump and Musk regime.
Just realized we'd make more from the write-off.
Saying the quiet part out loud, and so loudly that even the fictional denizens of Gotham City can hear it.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture ref.
Once they bang that gavel, Newman's one goddamn head pop away from the Oval Office.
Is MM trying to motivate the virus or Frenchie? Because Frenchie should be well aware of this, and the virus doesn't have ears or the cognitive capacity to appreciate the stakes at hand. Yet. Also, wait. Why isn't making Newman pop Singer's head Homelander and Sage's plan? She popped an entire Senate committee with no issue. There's basically no way it could be traced back to her, right? Just wait until he's in a public space, pop, and then she's the president. Why are we f***ing around with the complexities and risks that go along with bringing in another assassin?
Nobody said that Frenchie wasn't aware of the stakes, just that MM is reiterating them for the benefit of the audience and to motivate Frenchie, like you mentioned, as a possibility. Also, the complaint about not having Newman pop Singer's head is ignoring the fact that Sage's real plan is not to assassinate Singer, but rather to discredit him.
I told you Vicky locked it all down. Please lower your voice.
Completely misunderstanding or deliberately misusing the idea of speak-to-text.
Completely misunderstanding or deliberately misusing the lack of entertainment value of pointing things out on the screen.
And grapes don't last nearly as long as you think they do, which means at some point during all of this drama, either Huey or the shapeshifter pretending to be Annie went on a fruit run.
So people who are involved in drama aren't allowed to eat food anymore? What?
The night before my great-grandfather shipped out.
Finale has time for this.
For characterization? Yeah, it certainly does. Once again, Discount Jeremy doesn't know shit about storytelling.
I'm terrified of what's gonna happen, but I feel...
Skip! Now, does that feel redundant after my...
Skip?
Oh, that was great. 2 fingers was a lot.
Expecting me to believe that 2 fingers would even touch the sides. It's gotta be at least 5 before I begin to feel any kind of resistance from my digestive tract. Wait, we are talking about Butterfingers, right?
Unfunny and cringeworthy joke is unfunny and worthy of cringe.
I'm the one that gave you the juice that you needed. And I can do it again.
So I'm still confused about why the tumors and their associated tentacle powers have aligned themselves so specifically with the anti-soup portion of Butcher's psyche. Are they sentient or is it purely random? Could it just as easily have tapped into the part of Butcher that wants to start a rampage of puppy adoption?
Seeing as Compound V has an inherent violent streak, I'd say it's most likely that it naturally attaches itself to the most violent aspect of a person's psyche, but either way, it's an irrelevant question because this is the way it happened with Butcher, so it doesn't matter if it could happen any other way.
Bargain. We go all the way.
Show doesn't give us a scene of Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Carl Urban going all the way.
Discount Jeremy has a boner.
Get keeping a picture of Stormfront as a romantic memento, but the ego at play here, choosing a picture from her wedding to another man is certainly a choice.
So the sin is that an egotistical character did something as a result of his ego? What?
Say it with me now, everyone. Symbolism.
And that's a sin because... Oh, you're not going to provide any reason whatsoever? Then I can't accept this as a sin.
They cause kidney stones. The size of jawbreakers.
Okay, but she's a soup. Even if she can't get kidney stones, wouldn't she just pass them forcefully and with lethal precision? Because if not, that's creating a gaping hole in her abilities.
How so? Care to explain? No? Then I can't accept this as a sin.
No? Then why aren't your powers working?
Because someone on the writing team hates fun. And believe me, that's the kindest assumption I could make, given that this season has decided to mostly neuter the only 2 female members of the boys for most of the season.
And Discount Jeremy fails to understand the character development at play. Starlight has a massive identity crisis during this season, and this emotional turmoil caused her powers to malfunction. How can a man who watches TV for a living not understand simple things like this?
You weren't even the original choice to kill Singer.
Probably because it's needlessly risky to kidnap Starlight, replace her for 10 days, hope she isn't discovered, and then find a way to make sure your fake Starlight can get close enough to kill Singer while not having any of Starlight's actual powers, all to make her look bad.
Homelander and Sage want to frame Starlight, which will only strengthen their far-right movement. Sure, it's super risky, but then again, they're trying to take over the United States, so it's going to be risky no matter what plan they choose.
Steakhouse, where the birds get their baps out when they bring you a ribeye.
You can give me all the context clues in the world, and I will still never be certain what the Butcher is talking about.
Admitting to your own stupidity is quite refreshing, but you're still stupid, so...
I'll go to the Topless Steakhouse for you.
spoiling the final post-credit scene of Season 5 at least 2 years before it happens. Foreshadowing is just fancy spoiler.
Pointless throwaway sin is pointless and thrown away like free speech under Trump and Musk's oligarchy.
Victoria here is a superhero.
Now it gets interesting.
Interesting indeed. Although some might argue that waiting until episode 8 to get interesting wasn't the best tactic.
Discount Jeremy shares his personal opinion despite having the intellect of a brick ex machina.
To get reelected in 4 years. Article 2 of the Constitution.
New world, new rules.
By that logic, why give a shit about anything? Why isn't Homelander rolling in there, killing Singer himself, and taking over? Why even bother with Newman? I know we've asked this question a lot, but since he's now talking about ripping up the Constitution and doing away with elections, the "well, I'd rather be loved" excuse is wearing a little thin.
How are you this dense, especially with all the current events in the political world? Yes, Homelander would rather be loved. He's trying to discredit both Starlight and Singer so he will still be loved. Homelander doing things like assassinations is a last resort for the scenario in which his main plan fails. However, doing away with the Constitution and freedom will not lose him support, and that's not unrealistic. It's basically what's happening right now with our current administration, and MAGA still loves their cult leader, who is a horrible felon. Open your eyes, dude.
Doggone. Everything we have on Newman, the murders, your ties to Stan Edgar, everything. The originals, the backups, we've got nothing.
Everything? We're talking about the most important cachet of evidence the boys have, and it's all gone? First of all, don't trust it all to one person, especially if that one person is Huey. Second of all, I think we can assume deepfake Annie is behind this, but would real Annie even have the knowledge to find and delete all these files? Luckily for Newman, the writers sure think so.
You were so close to having a legitimately good sin, but you ruined it all with that last bit. Why would it matter if the real Starlight has the ability to delete the files? The episode is clearly showing us that the Shifter has the ability to delete them, so Starlight's ability or inability is completely irrelevant.
My dad would find me. Not this time, kiddo.
Your lack of specificity concerning how this time would be any different is quite damning. Homelander has found Ryan twice now in 4 seasons. It's almost like he has superpowers and the resources of a multi-billion-dollar company.
And nobody is suggesting that Mallory is correct here, just that she thinks this is true.
Me for wondering why the ego of a man who is actively collecting his alabaster trunk foliage isn't also wounded by his milk being publicly served to him in literal baby formula bottles.
Remember when Stan Edgar mentioned Homelander's psyche being a Freudian cesspool? Yeah.
Why isn't anything in Homelander's Fortress of Ego dude locked?
It's funny how you mention Homelander's ego, but then wonder why he's making mistakes like this. It's almost as if thinking that you're a god makes you do silly things sometimes. The next 2 sins contain a total of 4 pop culture references.
It's like a furnace in here.
And here's where my disbelief succumbs to gravity after being suspended for one logical leap too many. Huey will go on to list a bunch of suspicious things that clued him into Annie not being Annie, but this is apparently the line that convinces him, just because the Shifter said it once when they first met back in that apartment. And of course we're supposed to buy it because she said it to Annie earlier in this episode as if confirming that it's some very specific tell or catchphrase that only this soup would ever say. The thing is, there are so many cool ways to expose her, but the show picks this absolute contrivance instead.
I mean, what's so bad about Huey remembering a line that the shapeshifter said and then having a moment of realization when that line gets repeated? You already mentioned the buildup of other clues, so he clearly has a foundation of suspicion already in place.
Quick, just don't look at me, look right into the room. Huh? Don't look at me, just look forward.
How is this less suspicious than just facing each other and talking? Especially since from this angle, Huey can no longer see what the Shifter is doing, which allows them to sneak up on him. Also, let's throw in one final, if all soups have super hearing, why aren't Huey and MM having this conversation quietly across the room in a corner somewhere? Just for good measure.
I kind of agree with these 2 sins. At this point, Huey and MM should both be better at this sort of thing.
Trust me, I don't know how or when they switched, but that is 100% not Annie.
I'll refer back to my earlier sin and contest that you're, at best, 35% certain that's not Annie.
Discount Jeremy double dips cliche.
Being the least efficient way to kill a man in the name of looking extra sociopathic.
This move only takes her a few seconds. How is that significantly less efficient than anything else?
Why does this season keep killing Kimiko instead of letting her kick ass? I've seen her die more times than Captain Jack. No, I'm talking about Harkness, not Sparrow.
Discount Jeremy makes 2 pop culture references that aren't sins of the episode cliche.
Deus Ex Machina.
And Discount Jeremy still doesn't know what the term Deus Ex Machina means.
But I do know that I'm the bitch beating your ass.
The superpower of timing your suffocations with quippy lines.
The superpower of pointing things out on the screen.
We
have not failed. I will end Singer myself if I have to.
Then why haven't you?
Discount Jeremy double dips cliche.
Put the ring on her finger, Huey.
You know, I honestly thought the episode might spare us the Annie is mad at Huey for not knowing Annie wasn't okay bullshit, but apparently not. Never mind that this was a soup with the ability to exactly physically duplicate a person and have access to their memories.
Never mind the fact that Annie stays with Huey and he doesn't face any consequences from her outside of getting an angry talking to.
Balance isn't brave.
But it is entertaining. It is the show's calling card, and it is the #1 reason I keep coming back to this season after season. Don't act like that's gonna change.
They aren't acting like that's going to change. Huey doesn't like violence, but that doesn't mean everybody else is the same as him.
Frenchieing your coworker. Also, I guess all that stuff about how your last kiss with Kimiko felt really weird was just a bunch of bullshit, huh?
Nope, it did feel really weird. What are you talking about?
Now I can hear you.
I spent at least 5 minutes making a chart and tracking the Connect 4 placement through each scene, and I'm sorry to report they're all consistent, unlike when we send the game in Season 3. So here's a sin for whichever The Boys writer watched our videos and adjusted accordingly in the next season to deprive us of a sin.
Discount Jeremy sins consistency.
Ryan, you're strong.
He's stronger.
I'll train you.
Mallory instigated this conversation by saying,
We are out of time and out of better options.
so if the next step is to train Ryan to take on Homelander, how does time have anything to do with it? Either way, he's not going to be ready for years, right?
Yeah, but Mallory could very well be saying that they need to start the training right away. After all, the more time he has to train, the better he'll be later on.
These walls are 6 feet thick.
Did you not realize that when you came in? How did you not realize this wasn't a normal hospital when you came in?
Because he wasn't paying attention to the walls? Dude, this is a child. Why are you expecting him to behave like a careful genius?
Well, guess that's the end of Vicky's story then. No, don't worry. I'm totally fine. I totally didn't want to see the boys gradually build up a badass anti-7 soup roster of their own. No, seriously, I'm totally fine with the tension of a senior politician popping heads at will that's been teased for multiple seasons ends this suddenly.
Yeah, this death was super disappointing. Newman had so much potential for the next season, but suddenly she's dead in a very underwhelming way. Butcher could have demonstrated this ability on anyone else, like the Deep or Black Noir, but instead they got rid of Newman? Come on.
This is the plan. Just had to keep a few bits to myself. You know, the bits you'd up by, being you.
Okay, it's been hard to send Sage throughout the season in case some of the things that appeared to be ups actually ended up being part of the plan, which is exactly what happened. So here's a sin for that headache, and let's take a minute to break some of this nonsense down.
All of these sins are pretty damn weak. Just because everything happened this way and Sage achieved her end goal does not mean that everything went according to plan, or even according to her contingencies. Given the fact that she's a super genius, it's entirely plausible that she would be able to scramble in order to fix issues.
To conclude this thesis, Sage uses her super intelligence to predict up some spaghetti logic plan that guarantees victory. She then manages to insulate that plan from any number of ways that Homelander could have f***ed it up. She apparently has contingencies in place for everything from her being fired, to Firecracker farm fresh milking, to Octobutchy, and who knows what else. Look, I know that predictive modeling is a thing, but you could be the smartest person in the universe and still not be able to take all those factors into account and end up with a win this big. There's a difference between being smart and Doctor Stranging the future you want most.
Here's the thing. Sage was underdeveloped this season. The season could have made her a Joker-like master planner, which would have made total sense given her superpower, but instead they don't give her much screen time. If your sin had been for that, I would have removed one, but it wasn't.
That's President-elect Robert Singer, taken into custody by federal agents.
That fake-ass laugh.
And Annie has her powers back. Well, you know the old saying, better late than entertaining.
Discount Jeremy still doesn't understand character development, and he shares his personal opinion despite having the intellect of a brick ex machina.
Going full lock in your car and not allowing your imaginary friend to sit in the front passenger seat.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop.
As we conclude another finale staring into Butcher's eyes, I'm left contemplating.
Skip.
President up here! I voted for you! Wait a minute. That guy on the grassy knoll's got a gun! He's gonna shoot the president! Holy smokes, I've gotta do something! All right, Lee. Time to become an American hero.